Lil Peep said, I got death notes, where my list at? And it kind of got me curious about what would happen if he were to be placed in the Death Note universe. And what type of Death Note user would he be? And some people might think that Peep was too innocent and too sweet to ever pick up a Death Note. Well, I beg to differ. Because the Death Note isn't evil. It is simply an inanimate tool. A supernatural tool that lets you roleplay as the Grim Reaper and makes it super easy to fall into a god complex, but nonetheless, a tool. And I feel like with the Death Note, there's like a long list of different ways that you can use it. The first and most extreme one is you could try to use it to rule the world and do what Light did, and aim to create a utopia while quickly becoming a megalomaniac. You could go after famous politicians, enforce global communism, use it to make lots of money, or simply just not use it at all. But where's the fun in that? I would not be making this video if Pete didn't interact with the Death Note. But before we discuss how he would use it, we first have to break down Peep's character and what his motivation would even be. So on paper, Peep was relatively a normal kid, but in an interview he gave for V magazine, he hinted at childhood trauma and an ominous past that he didn't want to share.
There's things I don't really want to talk about. Stuff happened when I was young, and growing up where I grew up, the people I was surrounded by, besides my family, didn't have a good effect on me.
So with that description, anything could have happened really. And I think it's safe to say that's around the time his mental health started to decline too. So his dad left when he was really young, and his mom raised him for the most part in Long Island. He attended Long Beach High School, but would later mention how he hated school and was annoyed when people would copy his style and try to dress like him. So he really did not like posers. But I don't think that's enough to write somebody's name in the Death Note. Imagine showing up to school one day with pink hair and skinny jeans trying to look like Peep, and then you immediately get hit by a bus after the first bell rings. Oh God, I'm terrible. Peep would eventually drop out of high school when he was 17 due to his depression, and then after that he ran away to LA to pursue a music career. He constantly expressed through his lifetime that music was the only thing that saved him.
I could be dead. Things could have turned out way different. The fact that I became Lil Peep helped all that. I know what could have happened, and this is a better alternative.
And for the most part, Peep wasn't really known to be a controversial artist during his lifetime. Like, the only thing I could really find about him having beef with anybody was in this article I read where his close friends were saying that he didn't like XXXTentacion because of the allegations that he had against him. So I guess that's our first piece of conviction from Peep. He had a disdain for abusers, or in X's case, alleged abusers. Not saying that he would have went after X, but just giving some context here. But in all seriousness, Pete probably wouldn't have used the Death Note at first. I know, shocker, right? Shocker. Because after reading the rules of the notebook, he'd probably be having thoughts like, who am I to even decide whether or not someone lives or dies? He'd constantly be overthinking, like, what if I get it wrong? And what if I'm ending a story that wasn't finished yet? But see, the thing that separates Peep from other Death Note users is the fact that he's empathetic, and you can hear it in his music. And with empaths, they hate seeing people suffer. And they also hate seeing pain that they can't fix. Like watching somebody suffer from terminal illness, or seeing a child in an abusive situation that they can't escape, or even witnessing somebody beg for release. That's when people would begin to realize that the Death Note is more than just a weapon. It's also the only way to end suffering instantly. So in this case, Peep might just use the Death Note only as an act of mercy. Like, he'd only write names of people who are suffering beyond repair. Like, he might even ask for consent if he could. And he'd probably try to avoid criminals entirely, unless they're causing irreversible harm. But at that point, Peep would begin to realize something horrifying. Like, if he can end suffering instantly, then why stop at just individuals? Why not go after human traffickers and systems that hurt people? Like, the lines would start to blur a little bit. Like, not because he lacks empathy, but because he has too much of it. But we can't talk about Peep's use of the Death Note without talking about which Shinigami he'd bond with the most. And there are a lot of Shinigamis. Like I think there's like 14 altogether. But for the sake of this video, I chose Rem as Lil Peep Shinigami just because Rem is one of the only ones that understands care. Like, Rem genuinely loved Misa and was willing to die to protect someone. She already thinks in emotional terms and not just rules. And this is really important because Rem is the only Shinigami who would validate Peep's hesitation. Like, she wouldn't just tell Peep to write down a name. She'd make sure that if he was gonna do it, it means something. And that's crucial because Peep was already an overthinker. All right, now let's get to the juicy part. what would Peep's first contact with L look like? In my opinion, I think this would be a little bit more interesting than how Light and L interacted with each other, because Light was constantly trying to outsmart L and play chess with him, whereas Peep wouldn't want to play at all. He'd be more focused on why someone like L was wasting his time on him when there are people actually suffering. Like, that's the key difference. Peep wouldn't see L as an enemy at first. He'd see him as someone who's brilliant and who could be helping people, but he's tragically focused on the wrong target. So when the FBI starts narrowing in on Peep, he wouldn't do what Light did and try to eliminate threats like Rape Pember. He'd be thinking to himself, these are innocent people just doing their jobs. So what I think would happen is he'd be using the Death Note as little as possible, or even stop altogether just to let the investigation breathe. And unlike Light, Peep would be willing to look suspicious if it means not killing innocents. And this would obviously lead to L noticing that the killings stop when the investigations increase. And L would be thinking to himself, this person isn't acting like someone who wants power, and he's best driven by his beliefs instead of his pride. But eventually, I think that L would psychologically corner Peep with his intuition. And this leaves Peep with a choice. He could either A, become like Light and kill L, or B, let himself get caught. And honestly, I think Peep would let himself get caught, because he never would truly want to use it in the first place. But this is where L would be completely stumped, because he'd be thinking, if Peep was Kira, I would already be dead. And now L would be facing something he's never dealt with before. Not a killer trying to win, but a person choosing not to. And the bigger question becomes, can L prove that somebody is Kira, even if that person refuses to act like Kira? And an even deeper meaning is stopping him actually the right thing if all he was doing was just ending people's suffering?